part of the Montgomery City County Public Library's partnership with the Montgomery Education Foundation's MGM Leaps summer thematic unit focused on the arts in Montgomery, I have the pleasure once again to interview Miss Georgette Norman, who is an accomplished writer, an actor, and director, and all-around talented person. So Miss Norman, thank you so much for being with us again today.
Thank you for the invite.
So, yeah, just to jump into things yet again, about how old were you when you first really felt a pull towards the arts?
I really can't put an age on it. I've always been engaged. I was the only child of two only children. One very gregarious, the other one a little quieter. So I'm an extrovert introvert, you know, but I've always been very self-contained and entertained myself.
Right.
In my youth, I took dance from a very early age, ballet and tap, believe it or not, played piano, violin,
Wow.
played the clarinet in the high school band. And because the college orchestra was a bit short on many of the instruments like the oboe and the bassoon and the French horn and that kind of thing, the band director asked some of us if we'd take on some of those instruments. I did the oboe, and we would go to high schools around the counties and give these little mini concerts, you know, kind of thing on these instruments. And it was the university was using it as a recruitment technique, where they would, if there were students that were interested in these, they would get the instrument, but they would, and then they would come to the university and become a part of the orchestra and that kind of thing, you know. So it was an interesting recruitment tool.
Yeah.
And there were several of us that were involved in that. And at the time, you know, I think we knew that, but really didn't kind of grasp it in the way that it really was and stuff like this. It was like a day out of school, you know, playing an instrument and stuff like that. I also have always written, you know, from the time I can remember writing, I would write what was on my mind. And I taught school. I had $1 million. And so I would write and I would read them, you know, or I would say to them whatever I was thinking, you know. And it wasn't like teaching school in the traditional sense of reading, writing, arithmetic.
Mm-hmm.
We would talk, and I would share my stuff with them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting. So I spent a lot of time entertaining myself,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So I drew, I would paint, and my parents really indulged me, you know, because I guess I wasn't bothering them, you know. But so I did all that kind of stuff as a child, and I understood that words were important. I understood that words were impactful. I understood that words could hurt, and they could heal. And somewhere along the way, I understood that we make choices, you know, in what we put into the universe, be it through our words that we write, be it the pictures that we draw, be it the songs that we sing. And I would, and still do, daily write my thoughts along the way. I have these notebooks and these sheets of paper I just write something on, and I'll just put it in that notebook if I don't get a chance to write it.
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting out my window one day, and I saw these children from the ride going to the library, and watching them, you know, as their teachers. And this is like the Head Start.
Right.
And they go to and every Tuesday, and I would say, oh, it must be Tuesday, because I see the children going. And then it hits me that these children are going to school, going to a library that the city did not provide when I was growing up.
Mhm.
That the library was at the community center headed by Bertha Williams, who was the first librarian, Black, in the city, and credentialed in the state, really.
Mhm.
And how important that was, and to see young people, at 4 and 5 years old, going to the library for story time, that would probably in no other way have that access.
Right.
And me being able to tell the day of the week by these little ones, So I mean, that kind of connectivity and stuff like that, which is looking at how the arts are much more than just the painting or the writing, but they are how you see the world.
Right.
And how you interpret it. Like I said, I'll paint on anything. Furniture, be it a table. I'm doing now, I have a chase that I'm painting, and she's Got My Back. And I'm doing it because sometimes, life gets heavy, it's weighty.
Mhm.
And you don't kind of know what's happening out there, which road you're taking or where you're going, or, like in limbo. And it's where I always go. So I decided to paint on it. And I can say, well, whoever else is not there, you've got my back.
I love that.
And then I write essays. I do poetry, and I love to read. And to talk about what I've read, and to talk to people about what I'm reading, and if they're reading the same thing or if they read it.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of their interpretation. Because during the 60s, I was kind of in DC toward the end, and everybody was carrying something in their pocket, in their hand. They were reading, and you stop people and you say, "Oh my God, are you reading so-and-so? Have you gotten to page so-and-so? Wow, do you have any idea what they're saying?" And for known, really, like, what is this man talking about? And people were eager to share. No one was afraid of not knowing. Right now everybody's got to be, I'm in the authority on this, and I know this, that, and the other. But, the movements taught me that we grow and learn from each other. And you're not afraid to ask about what you do not know. It was what it says when you go, wow, never thought about it that way. Glad I met you. That kind of thing.
Right.
So the arts, which is a way of listening, a way of hearing, and a way of acting in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you put out there lives out there, and even though you don't realize it, somebody is picking it up.
Yeah. And I love your emphasis on the literary arts, because I think that a lot of times we forget that is art. Mm-hmm. There's so much expression and interpretation in writing and reading, and it belongs right alongside the visual arts and the performing arts.
Oh, absolutely. And I borrow and use all the time. Like T.S. Eliot has a poem, I can never remember the name of the poem, but the line is, at the still point of the turning world. And I realize that's my escape. I escape to the still point and let all the, the hurricane and everything else just roll around me, and I'm just there in that whirlwind, untouched, until things blow over. Mm-hmm. And then I can step down. Mm. So it's like, I think the arts allow us to find ways to navigate the waters of life. Mm-hmm. And most times when things are at their most dire, we are alone. And you can either just wallow in whatever the turmoil is at the time, or you can rise above it.
Mhm.
you know. Like a lot of times in my writings, I'll deal with water, and trying to catch the next wave, waiting for the wave.
Mm.
And then the wave comes and I'm on my surfboard and I ride in and then I wait for the next one. And sometimes that next one is a long time coming in and I have to lift my surfboard and go in. Or sometimes, you have to say, I'm just unavailable.
Mhm.
And people said, Georgia, you live on an island. And I said, yes, And when I feel like being bothered, I just lower the planks so people can walk in.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I just pull it up, which
Yeah.
means that I'm attending to my own needs. And most times that's when I'm my most creative.
I was going to say, isn't that like oftentimes when we like create the most, when we are most artistic, is when we dive into ourselves and explore that. Yeah.
And Pop said, I'm not just because you don't allow yourself to be. You're too busy running around, scurrying here and there. We have to allow ourselves to act upon that which is coming to us.
And that was one thing I wanted to touch on that you mentioned earlier, like speaking about when you were younger and you said your parents indulged you. And when I heard that, I thought about how many kids may not be so indulged or even stifled, right? So now we've come to talking about how we have to allow that in ourselves. So,
yes.
So like for the kids listening, to be your own biggest fan, to be your own encourager, and to allow yourself the freedom to create. And
but if you're waiting for the world to do it,
exactly,
you'll just be sitting there waiting. So just about you publish. I write for me.
Right.
Even though I do have this book that's ready. I'm just not ready for that piece of me to be that public.
Right.
So I think that you have to reserve certain parts of yourself for yourself. I think because that nurtures you. That's why you have to be still and listen. Yeah. Just be still and listen. Talk to yourself. I talk to myself all the time. Not necessarily out loud. And then sometimes I do that too. When it's that profound. But I listen. And I listen to what others say, good, bad, or indifferent. Because I think we have to indulge. I mean, I have to sometimes on something like, where does that come from? And sometimes I might ask, how are you acculturated? And to be as old as I am now, to still hold on to attitudes of a time past, to put them on, to wear it like a dress, to deal with what we did, how we, it's like, then how is it advancing us today? At what point did we stop doing that? Commemoration is wonderful. Action is excellent.
Indeed. So I think we've like really touched on already, like how rewarding the arts can be and the experiences that they provide. But to put you on the spot, is there anything, what comes to mind when I say, what was the most rewarding experience that you've had in the arts?
That's difficult. The most rewarding experience. I think recognizing myself as an artist. For a long time, I just drew or I just wrote. But recognizing that what I drew touched someone outside me. or what I said touched someone outside me, that my artistic endeavors fed someone in ways I'd never imagined. And that's reward, that you actually touch somebody.
Yeah.
And not just touch, but you know how you touched them.
Right.
You know? And I think that's the most rewarding thing for me. And it happens over and over. It's not like it's a one-time shot, like you had an exhibit and people came.
Right.
You know, I remember you saying, you know, or something like that. And I don't even know the people.
Mm-hmm.
I've never met them before, really. And they'll say, I was so and so, so and so, so. And I'm like, I'm so glad you had the 830 house.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't able to support like I wanted to or should have. But, and my thing is, but you came.
Mm-hmm.
You experienced.
So tell us again what the 830 house was.
It was a cultural center.
Okay.
Where we, looked at all facets of the African-American experience. And when you think of the arts, we think of the usual, the arts, you know, the painting, drawing, dancing, that kind of stuff. But I remember a friend of mine in Virginia had written a book on a midwife in Eutaw, Alabama.
Hmm.
And we decided that we were going to honor midwives. So she came to do a book reading, and we brought Mrs. Smith to the 830 house.
Wow.
And there's a woman at Tuskegee who had done a lot of work in history and talk and stuff about midwifery. And she came and did a talk on the whole history of midwifery. And I sent a call out. And we commissioned this guy in New York, I can't think of his name now, to do an exhibit on midwifery. And it was a folding exhibit, and we had it set up in one of the rooms.
Right.
And I just put a call out and I said, if you were caught, come to the 830 house. I gave him the date and all this kind of stuff.
All right.
To honor, you know, midwives.
Mm-hmm.
I did say midwives. I just said to give honor of your birth.
Right.
And having no idea how that was going to go down. And I had this big black pot, the big black wash pot that folk used to use in the backyards.
Right.
And I had it filled with candles. And Mrs. Smith spoke and talked about her life in Eutaw as a midwife. Ms. Talbot gave a historical significance of it. And then I said, if you were caught, all of you that were here that were caught, everybody had a candle. Light your candle and call their name. I can feel it now. It was a very emotional evening. And people cried as they said, this is the first time I've ever called your name.
Wow.
Because I was embarrassed, because I was not born in the hospital. I didn't want folk to know. You know, all kind of stuff like that.
Right.
Happened, you know, in terms of understanding now what that was. And then realizing that at the time they were born and they had midwives. You weren't dropped in a field somewhere.
Right.
And now you find, and at that point in time, you found that the elite were choosing to have midwives as opposed to going to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So the tables flip up and turn, but it gives an opportunity to value our histories and to be able to look at it not as something that was lacking in my community, but that's something that was there that is to be lifted.
Yeah.
And stuff like this. So we did those kind of things as well. So I'm saying it was looking at the experience, bringing dance groups in. And when I bring groups in, they're not just here to be on stage for a night for you to pay some money for. They go into the schools, choose a school, and they go in and do something. I had Monty Dance Company from Chicago to come in, and we did puppetry. They were here for a week. We did puppetry. We did cooking. We did dance. And it's like looking at how do we share? Because these groups want to work within community, because that's how they got started, coming out of community.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes really, really important to not just say, come in and do your little performance and leave, but share yourself in ways, let them see you, and have these little things for children, and put them in places that children that are not going to come somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? For all kinds of reasons.
Yeah.
It's just not on the radar. Living, food, shelter, and clothing are paramount on my mind. I don't have time to be dealing with going to some kind of, see some art exhibit.
Right.
So I'm saying it was that's what it was really. It was a place like photographers to come and talk about, well, you got just have to talk about your craft, like what we're doing now, how you got involved.
Mm-hmm.
How do you stay focused? Tom Feelings came, a book he'd worked on as long as I'd known him. And it had finally come, the middle passage, in artistically done. And it just says that what speaks to you, you have an obligation to give that to the world.
Mm.
Now, and I'm not saying that's got to be a big thing, but your world, the world that's around you, we must share. Otherwise, you implode. And that's why we say artists are crazy. Because if they can't produce and get it out there,
right,
it's just too much running up in the head.
Right. And it's funny because, so my next question had been, I was going to ask about the importance of the arts to society, but we just covered it, right? Because in what you were saying, you mentioned overcoming stigma, you mentioned being exposed to new ideas or uncomfortable ideas, expression and self-expression, and gaining different viewpoints from others as they share their self-expression. Yeah, all those things are what make a society great, right? Like what we can look to as, what do we want in our society? What kinds of things do we want to see and experience? And they come from the arts, don't they?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, the arts are a way of de-stressing.
Right.
They connect you to a deeper meaning of life. And I think we have a responsibility to shine that light on the world, because only light can penetrate darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And I always, when I was teaching, I tell my students that, when you're on a train, and it goes through a tunnel, it's dark. I mean, you don't see anything. And a lot of times the lights are out. Mm-hmm. So it's just dark. And, it depends. Even if you're in the car on a road, one of those little country roads at night, it's just dark. And only when you begin to see in the far distance a glimmer of light,
Mm.
and you know the civilization is there.
Right.
And so you don't drive off the road, you drive to the light, to be in the light. And I think the arts kind of help us to find the light.
Mm-hmm.
And we become a flashlight, you know, shining it on the darkness that we see in the world. But most of all, I would say that the arts give me a deeper appreciation of life. And it helps me to evaluate my life and the lives of those I see around me,
Mm-hmm.
that says, this is the work yet to be done.
Right. And so that's a perfect segue into my next question, because I wanted to know your take on the arts in Montgomery now. I know that specifically with some artists that I know, they have been part of a greater push for more public artworks and more focus on arts in Montgomery. But thinking about like your work, even at the 830 house and now, what do you think still needs to be done in Montgomery?
I think we need to, especially from a Black perspective,
Mm-hmm.
the arts improve quality of life,
Mm-hmm.
okay? They also help you to understand from whence you come. The historic African-American communities in Montgomery were generally destroyed by either gentrification, highways, public buildings, whatever. And so we've lost a great deal of the richness of it. We talk about the civil rights movement, but these communities were the incubators and the midwives for those movements. And the few remaining buildings that we have standing are the bedrock. They are the citadels for what was. We talk about our churches and all this kind of thing that now sit solitary in many of these communities. And yet they still have members, even though many of them are dwindling. But you know that it's because they stood there, and the grandeur of them let you know that somebody lived here. Somebody's lived here. I'm embarking on what I'm calling a creative placemaking project that involves artists, that tells the story of these communities. I tell people all the time, I joke about it, that people come to Montgomery to be traumatized. They come here for the Civil War, for slavery, for civil rights, you know, lynching. All of these are traumatic entities.
Yeah.
So was the removal and displacement of Black families from their communities. We understand home very well. It's a place we go to for solace, for compassion, for love, and for safety. When one loses one home, as in a hurricane or flood or an earthquake, the entire country offers all kind of love and sympathy and help and hope because of the trauma that they must be going through. We never talk about the trauma of loss and displacement of Black folk when they are coercively forced to leave home. So my thing is to recreate the concept of community and to have healing spaces, not just for people in Montgomery, but for those who come. Because they come in a car, mostly not alone. They come on a bus that's crowded, or on a plane. And oftentimes it's their weekend. They're trying to get all of this in while they're here. And then they get back into their car or their bus or the plane, carrying the trauma with them. As one who comes from a people who've had to deal with a great deal of trauma, I know what that feels like. And somehow we need to find ways to help people release some of that before they head home.
Right.
And for those of us living here, we must remember and say, somebody or somebody's know I'm here. And do it through the arts. I'll be more than willing to share that in a much fuller kind of talk at some other time.
Okay, I'm going to take you up on that. And so, like, would it be fair to say that through, like in our earlier talk, we were talking about civil rights, in that there's a lot of exploration of that trauma, and coming to terms with it and seeing how to not necessarily overcome it, but to not allow it to continue, to make things different. And so in the arts, like what I'm getting from what you're saying now is that not only could we explore trauma and emotion and feeling through the arts, but also the art of preservation of the beauty of culture and community.
Exactly.
And some of the things that have been forgotten or lost, and to focus more on that in our art in Montgomery.
And not necessarily a name call, a roll call.
Right.
You know, it's that kind of thing. It's an infinite project, and I have some wonderful, they're like wonderful stakeholders that we're working on. So I'm really excited about it. And you'll be the first to know when it unfolds. Please. Yeah. But it's like, and a lot of the artists that are doing stuff around me, I'm just really, because art speaks to something in us. You know, it awakens us, allows us not only to connect with ourselves, but with others, finding like-minded folk, or finding people that, wow, never heard quite put that way. That's got to percolate a little bit, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But it makes you really think about the world. Art creates.
Yeah. So in closing today, in speaking to the younger community here in Montgomery, the growing artists, the ones who are finding their passions now or who haven't even stumbled upon them yet, what would you say to them?
You know, when you asked me that, I had to really do some serious reflection. And I want to make sure that I'm going to actually share with you what came to me. Don't be afraid to be different. I came back to Montgomery in 1985 with dreadlocks almost down to my waist. People thought I'd lost my mind. Nobody had seen a dreadlock. You know, people tell me, I don't know why you go out of your way to be ugly. Oh, wow. What a thing to say to somebody, you know. Why do you dress? And I was, dressed pretty much, I was from the islands. I was an island dress, African dress, all kinds of stuff. And it made me aware of how much people were in a group think existence. So my thing is that life is art. Mm-hmm. And to live an authentic life, we must cultivate that which is inside us. We are born with great curiosity and creativity to explore and develop, be it playing a tune, sculpting, bringing a blank canvas to life, or setting a gorgeous dinner table. There is great artistry in that, even cooking a meal. Be an active observer. Take time to listen to the words, see the pictures, and hear the sounds around you that increase your self-awareness and show you what's possible in the world. Be generous in sharing your feelings in whatever artistic way best articulates them. Speaking, writing, dancing, drawing, or any other creative way you choose. Don't be afraid to share your joy and light, because there's always someone watching and listening, being lifted and lit by you.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for sharing your passions with us. And thank you for inspiring me, and I guarantee lots of others who may see this. So yes, thank you again, Ms. Norman, for being with us today.
Thank you for strengthening me, making me more aware of the path I'm on, and that I'm not alone on that path, and that there are many that I don't know. But you now are one of the hands at my back that keep me standing.
Thank you. And guys, I hope everyone else enjoyed listening to Miss Norman's words and thoughts and just passion. Nothing says art more than passion. So thanks everyone for being with us today, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. Thank you.